Welcome to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers, newbies, and veterans, and everyone in between. We're hosted by M.A. Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms, all from Writers Inc. Books. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Each episode lasts as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, drive a short commute, or take a brisk walk. Resources and links are in the show notes. Visit us at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Now, on to this week's episode. We don't often take the time to look back, to do a retrospection. We track our accomplishments and diligently write down the small steps that take us to our short-term goals and on to our long-term goals. If we're good little bunnies, we check our master plan once a year and rewrite it every third or fifth or seventh year. I can't imagine a 10-year master plan. I had to drop back from a 5-year to a 3-year because my plans change so much. New information, clarified goals. I shoved things forward that I wasn't able to accomplish when I first envisioned through my rosy-colored glasses. Then something happens that causes us to stop spinning wheels and take a longer view of where we started and our journey to where we are. Robert Frost says that whatever path we take, we will have reached this point no matter what. The road not taken looked just like the road we took, and here we are. Decisions in that yellow wood, the ones we thought so crucial, they didn't really matter after all. We're here now. That's what matters. Even so, when we do stop and look back, we should consider all we've gained, all we've learned, and share that with others. Advice along the lines of, wish I'd known. Way back last year, I considered a Wish I'd Known episode. I was looking ahead as usual, wondering what I would do after the podcast finished the Discovering Your Plot series. Then I forgot about it in the grand idea of a Defeat Writer's Block series, which we just finished. Here I am again. Back in early January, I was late prepping for my January newsletter, and it dawned on me that when October arrived, I would be into my 10th year of publishing. 2015 to 2024 is 10 years, and celebrating a book a month would be a smart thing to do for the newsletter. Then I counted up and realized that this podcast would reach its 5th year in October, another milestone. I knew we were in the 5th season, but I didn't really think about doing anything for when we achieved the 5th and actually neared the 6th season. The next day I realized I should have a retrospective of the podcast. But when? For the October anniversary? Earlier? Later? I put the idea aside to draft episodes for Defeat Writer's Block. I drafted the last episode for that series last week. I looked ahead for the next series, the Summer Writing Challenge, which I would like to make an annual event. Between the end of the Writer's Block series and the start of the Writing Challenge are 2 lonesome episodes, the perfect place for 2 retrospectives on podcasting and on writing. Or should the focus be the depressing hard stuff and the exciting rewarding stuff? I didn't use the word easy. None of this is easy. Much of the exciting stuff can also be depressing, and much of the hard stuff is also rewarding. So it's back to the categories of podcasting and writing. Let's start with podcasting, especially since many people are exploring podcasting as a new endeavor. They've leaped into TikTok and Instagram, and now they're contemplating the longer format of podcasting. I mulled over this podcast for over a year. I didn't know the first thing about podcasting, but I'd never hesitated to teach myself a new skill. Podcasting was becoming widespread in 2019, and it would only become more popular The first problem was lack of cash, a perennial problem. Several high-priced services could be called immediately. I needed inexpensive, easy to use. A third criterion became a provider that would send to a wide variety of outlets through an RSS feed. And I suddenly had a lot of learning to do. RSS feed, MP3 versus MP4 files, editing an audio recording. Audacity offered a free audio mastering program. It looked intimidating, still looks intimidating, and I still haven't touched much of what the software has available, but I love it for what it can do and do very well. For several months, every time I turned around, I had something new to acquire and multiple decisions required for each new acquisition. Podcast service host, checked off in spring. YouTube learning videos filled my summer, as well as tinkering with Audacity recording, mastering, exporting as an MP3. The microphone in my laptop was woefully inadequate. I found an adequate one. My microbuds worked adequately for several years. I wish I'd known two things at the beginning of this venture. One, I only needed to save the MP3 file after I mastered the recording. For months and months, I saved the Audacity files, and they consumed a lot of memory unnecessarily. I still don't have all of those Audacity files purged from my laptop. 2. Each episode can be built from a series of smaller MP3 files, imported into Audacity to create the episode file. Opening and closing files recorded once, then used every episode. An intro file to begin the episode, and any temporarily active information. The content file, which is the bulk of the episode. I do not know why I did not realize this from the very beginning. A well-known podcast has 5 to 6 of these segments, sometimes 7, in each episode. I am slow. It took me a solid year to realize I didn't need to keep saying the opening and closing each time I recorded an episode. Duh. After I had several MP3 files on my podcast host, I realized that I was missing a major distribution channel, YouTube, which only takes video files. I would need to convert the audio MP3 to a video MP4. I did not want my face projected into the world. You should thank me for that. When I encountered this problem, my podcast host did not provide a video version. Now it does. Although its upload to YouTube occasionally misses, and I have to create an MP4 and upload it myself. Then, though, I decided to create PowerPoint slideshows, some with 20 plus slides, which took hours. Then I added in the MP3 and converted to an MP4. Fairly quickly, a glitching problem showed up in the first videos. I searched and searched and searched for a solution. I reached out to podcast instructors. They offered no solution. Eventually, I stumbled upon the solution months later while I was reading an obscure post on video file problems. MP3 files are too compressed when converted to MP4. WAV files will solve that glitching problem. In Audacity, we can export audio files as MP3s and WAV files. Problem solved. But this easy solution took months. Podbean now sends a video file to YouTube, which gives back to me a couple of hours. Now I can generate a PowerPoint slide as an eye-catcher card, which also brands the series with a common look. AI is taking over some of these jobs, but for a price I'm not willing to pay. I make no money from this podcast. Other podcasters use affiliate links or have Patreon supporters who pay them. But using Patreon would require additional time to generate content for the Patreon supporters. Additional time which I am not willing to expend. We have more wish I'd known important things. And the greatest of these is one. Podcasting requires an investment of time. Time to plan and craft the podcast. Time to make it sound more than halfway decent. Time to learn how to do new things and how to fix obscure problems. That time will always take longer than you think it will, whether you are learning something new or you're seeking a solution to a problem. 2, the second greatest is to decide how much you're willing to spend and stick to a budget. Audacity is free. My distribution channels are free, but my podcast host is not. The host AI services are not free, and only a little extra time is needed to do some of those AI tasks. Equipment has to be bought when you aren't expecting it. In addition to unexpected equipment, all of these audio files consume memory, so storage of these files has to be paid for. I've run into storage banks that refuse to work and storage drives that are empty after a year. I currently use laptop and flash drives for my main and backup storage for current files and cloud storage for files I've finished with. The cloud storage is holding files uncorrupted and still usable even after 2 years, untouched, up there in the nebulous electronic vapor. Time and cost are currently the two ends of a decision for me. YouTube creates an automatic transcript of each episode, but the errors in the transcript make me cringe. Do I take the time to learn where and how to proof and correct the transcript? Do I pay for AI or a service to create a better transcript? Or can I live with an AI that doesn't catch half my words and fills the transcript with errors? And the answer should be from this question. What's more important, this podcast or my writing? This is a juggling action because here's the third major thing on the Wish I'd Known list. I've made a commitment to a podcast with a weekly episode. That's a deadline to be maintained, even when I come down with COVID or my biannual throat issues. Pollen is not my friend, thus the scratchy throat. I can write nonfiction when fiction refuses to give me a word. And nonfiction broke the writer's block that descended on me when I had RSV in December. This podcast is also an outlet for nonfiction. It keeps the skills I learned and used for 40 years sharp. And for that alone, I thank it. And keep juggling the podcast with fiction writing, which is my greater love and aspiration. This podcast, which I offer free, open to everyone, gives me a chance to give back from all who've taught me and blessed me, and to give the knowledge of writing that I've acquired over my lifetime to people who are currently like I was at the beginning, ignorant of what I needed to know about writing, and unsure where I needed to turn for help or to whom I needed to turn to learn. That's the kind of stuff we cannot get from AI, and it's behind a paywall for many. That paywall might be too steep for some. It would have been for me when I first went looking. Back to our Wish I'd Known list with a fourth major item. Look for multiple ways to use whatever content you generate. I was 3 years in when I finally took the plunge into audiobooks. I didn't start with my podcast files, but with fiction. But I'm using these podcast audio files now. I want to kick myself for not thinking to do it from the very beginning. I do kick myself for not moving to use them consistently. Here's the greatest of all, and it applies to anything podcasting and anything writing. Changes always occur, and we have to stay abreast of them. That's the basic nature of life, isn't it? Some changes are easy, like adding chapter markers to podcast episodes, and some are hard and have obscure solutions that may take months to find. It can feel like it's a constant scramble to stay caught up on the changes, and juggling everything you want to do can be nerve-wracking and intimidating, but we can do this. Because of the podcast, I knew I could create my own audiobooks. Because of this podcast, I opened up my distribution channels. We can stay indie as we expand our reach to new audiences and readers. And that's the major thing I wish I'd known when I first contemplated a podcast. The new thing may intimidate us, but we will find guidance and solutions. We can do this. Thanks for listening to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Renee Black and Edie Runes. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mind your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, write on.